Alright boys, welcome back to BBL, this time week 6 against OGalbina, the person who I like to think is my draft league rival. If you missed last week, we faced Joey in a very close game. I'm not going to spoil it here for you, but go ahead and check that one out as well. And go ahead and check out Owen in the top right hand corner. I'm going to be honest boys, unfortunately this week, Mons took a backseat. I was pretty busy in life this week, so unfortunately I didn't have the time that I wanted to in order to prep this team, but I still put a good couple hours into this team for sure. Shout out Obo and Wagon again for helping me as per usual. This team I feel the least confident about. Last week I didn't put as much time in the team, but I still felt extremely confident. This week I don't feel as confident, but I do think that we have a good matchup. But I'm rambling. Let's go ahead and talk about the team. Owen's team is going to consist of Dialga, Fluttermane, Taramew, Crocodile, Ogerpon Corner, Quaquaval, Weezing, Shaman, Rotom, and Sableye. And if you missed our team, it should be on screen as well. So as far as our team goes, I think pretty cut and dry. The best Pokemon on our side of the field is Kyurem Black. He has very few switch-ins. A Dragon Dance Kyurem Black with Earth Power or Scale Shot, because at +1 it does massive damage to Rotom either way. Icicle Spear and Fusion Bolt looks crazy. The big downside there is going to be getting a Dragon Dance off. Looks a little tough. It is a little tough. Choice Banded or Choice Scarf sets also look fantastic here. Locking a move, an ice move specifically, is a little tough. I'll talk about it in a minute, but Quack does us really dirty, so locking that ice move isn't something we necessarily want to do, but we do have the potential to outspeed him with that Scarf and Fusion Bolt him as well. So there's a lot of different options for Kyurem Black. Easily the best Pokemon on our side of the field this week. We also have Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is really tough, man. Every single week, I feel like it's really good, and we've done a really good job of pinpointing what set does well each week. Huge shout out to Wagon with Ho-Oh specifically. He's been the biggest help. This week was probably the toughest week to pin down a set, and I know I say that every single week. Ultimately, it came down to 2 sets, and I'll talk about them in a little bit, but everything on his team gets rock coverage. It's like Dialga, Fluttermane, Mew, Crocodile, Ogerpon, Quack, it's water move to KO us, and then the other 4 don't really matter. Rotom beats us in a one-on-one situation, so in general, Ho-Oh doesn't do great and it gets outsped by a lot of things here, but we did find a set to hopefully take advantage of some of his weaker Pokemon. Next up, we got Gholdengo. Gholdengo's tough to bring in, honestly. I debated for a long time whether or not to bring him. Colbur set does well, Akaberry set does well for Dialga, as well as potential Rotom, and you know, there's a couple of different sets that do well. Thunder Wave does pretty good. Nasty Plot, 3 attacks. Nasty Plot recover, dual stab. It does have a lot of usability, but its speed stat specifically in this matchup, I mean, it gets outsped by everything not named Weezing and Sableye, so it's a little tough to bring it, but I'm not going to spoil whether or not we brought it, but I will say it was a last minute decision to bring it or to not bring it. Next up, we got Boulder, Big Shoulder Day. Of course, Iron Boulder does fantastic. My initial thought when looking at this matchup was Rock Move has no resist that also resists fighting. So basically, if we turn into Terrakion with our Terra type being fighting, he does not have a resist on his entire team because our other stab and Psychic Stab hits the Weezing super effectively. I will say though, I'll talk about it in a minute, but both Boulder and Kyurem Black being so good setup wise did make me have to consider the Sableye with Prankster Encore quite a bit here. Grim does really well. There's a lot of opportunity for me to set up specifically under screens with Kyurem Black, Boulder, and even Ho-Oh. There's a lot of opportunity for that in this game. Getting the screens up is a little bit tougher in this game than most because a lot of his offense overruns Grimmsnarl, who has pretty weak stats overall. But typically can get those screens up, obviously because of Prankster, but in general, a lot of different things have the ability to set up on us this week, and we don't really love that, and we don't have a good neutral move into everything here. Spirit Break would be the closest that we get, and it's alright, man. We can break a sub on that Dialga for sure, but if he's a Steel Mew, which is what I'm expecting, I'll talk about that later, it puts us in a really bad spot. Next up, we got Bloopster, and Bloopster's awesome here, man. He doesn't love spikes, he doesn't have removal besides Quack on his entire team, and I don't really think you fit Rapid Spin on your Quack this week unless you don't run a single pair of boots, and then I guess I could see it potentially with no setup move. Other than that, Rapid Spin from Bloopy is very important. Dual stabs do pretty well. I mean, Bloopy does have some usability here. It does get walled by a couple of different things, namely the Rotom and the Shaman, but the Rotom should fear the Spore, as should like switching in hard Dialga or hard Fluttermane. So the big downside of Bloopy here is for hard Fluttermane, if he does not fear Spore, which I have not brought yet, so he definitely could overplay and not fear Spore, hard Fluttermane is a real possibility and really hard for us to deal with. G-Weezing is another Pokemon that was definitely highly considered. T-Spikes in general do very well into his team, and the combination of Dual Stabs plus Willow, even just Pain Split, the potential to defog, Weezing has a lot of usability here in this matchup. Azelf sucks. I'll be honest, Azelf was not considered at all. It's like, its speed tier is nice, but Flutter Mane makes me not really love this Pokemon. If I bring rocks, I would rather have Swampert. Swampert has a lot more usability in this game than Azelf's. Lead Taunt could be a possibility, but I'm like Ogerpon or Crook, but then I just get knocked by either of them, or even cudgeled by the Ogerpon, and I'm at Sash. It's just, Azelf is just so bad, man. I'm not a big fan of Azelf, and I probably will not draft it again unless out of necessity. Swampert, again, Swampert once again has usability, so we have 7 Pokemon to choose from here. Sorry, 8 Pokemon to choose from here that, in my opinion, have good usability. We're not even going to talk about Grottle. Swampert really has 3 options here. It only has a couple options each week, but 3 main options here that were considered: Assault Vest for the special Dialga, as well as the Flutter Mane does really well. A rocking set with like Rock Knock, Flip Turn, Earthquake does really well, and then also a Banded set does fantastic. Owen does not have great switch-ins to Water plus Ground Stab, and free Flip Turns are awesome into him in general. So those were the 3 sets that were considered there, and those were the Pokemon that I considered. As far as Owen's side goes, I think the best Pokemon that he has is Ogerpon. Genuinely, I think there's very little counterplay that I have to the Ogerpon Cornerstone, especially if it is lead. Its speed tier paired with its dual stabs make it very hard for me to deal with, and he has a couple of options, whether he wants to bring a Spike Stacking variant or Swords Dance Trailblaze, both of which do very well into me, and potentially break for the in-game either way that he wants to go. So he has a couple of different options there, and then obviously Flutter Mane, we don't really have great pivots into Flutter Mane. Ho-Oh can kind of pretend to be, but Power Gym does definitely hurt, and if he's booster special attack, that's going to send us sideways. I do anticipate potentially Scarf or potentially Booster Speed to counteract our potential Booster Speed on the Boulder, because Booster Speed Boulder does look very, very good into him. But past that, Flutter Mane, it's probably going to be like 4 attacks. It's going to be like Energy Ball, Power Gym, Dual Stabs, or instead of one of the coverage moves, it could be Calm Mind. Dialga always does good. The set that I anticipate the most is like a Stone Edge Dragon Tail set or a Stone Edge Roar set. Stone Edge Dragon Tail Assault Vest could be an option for sure to chew hits from a special Kyurem. I think that makes a lot of sense. There's also, I saw in the few mocks that I did, I saw like an Iron Defense Weakness Policy set and a Bulk Up Weakness Policy set, and both of those make a lot of sense as well. If you do that, you're probably dual stabs with Fire Move, if I had to wager a guess. Dialga's tough to nail down here. I actually don't think that its matchup is nearly as good as Flutter Mane's. I do think we have pretty decent counterplay to it. Its speed tier just makes it a little bit awkward because its base 90 speed are things that we want to outspeed it don't, like Swampert, like Gholdengo specifically. Gholdengo's the big one, and even Ho-Oh speed tying it. I don't know why I mentioned Swampert. Man, obviously Swampert doesn't outspeed him. Makes it a little bit awkward to have adequate counterplay to Dialga. Really, I don't know what set to anticipate here. He could even just be like a rock set. Next up, the last Pokemon that I think is guaranteed coming no matter what. I don't think there's a build where the 3 Pokemon I named and Mew do not come. I think Mew, in my opinion, is Terra Steel. I think Terra Steel makes the most sense. He could also be Terra Dark to block hits from the Grimmsnarl with like Thunder Wave Taunt, things like that. If he wants to seek out Grimmsnarl as a setup target, potentially, but even then I can hit him with Fairy Stab. So Mew is definitely tough to deal with. There's a couple of sets I'm a little afraid of, specifically Dragon Dance is the primary one, but there's also like a Citrus Berry bulky with Will-O-Wisp to take Icicle Spears from the Kyurem Black. That could be a big problem as well, because he doesn't have really, like I said, he doesn't have really great Kyurem Black counterplay, and that's why I think Steel makes the most sense, in my opinion, as far as a Mew typing goes. Past that, I think it's honestly a toss-up for the rest of the Pokemon. The last slot, the 5th slot, excuse me, I'm pretty confident is going to be Quack. I think Quack just makes a ton of sense into me. I do have some counterplay with things like Grimmsnarl, G-Weezing, Booster Boulder. I've shown a tendency to run Scarf Ho-Oh as well, or Scarf Kyurem Black. I do have a lot of counterplay to it in that sense, but offensively it just shreds me. I don't really have switch-ins to dual stabs plus Ice Move, dual stabs plus Brave Bird. In general, it does a lot of damage, way too much damage, and it's very, very strong and hard for me to deal with. So I have a hard time not seeing Quack come, but if he thinks his offense is covered by Flutter Mane plus Ogerpon, even Dialga, which it very well could be, he might opt to not bring Quack, but I do think it probably comes. Crook makes a ton of sense as well. I think Crook, even as a lead set, Intimidate Shuffling for things like the Kyurem Black could be potentially nice. The Ho-Oh, you could be like a Rock Knock set with Earthquake Stone Edge. I think that set makes the most sense. I don't really see any other type of Crook coming. Maybe you're like a bulk up skill shot set, but I don't really see the merit there comparatively. But hey, it could come. Rotom is the last Pokemon that I truly expect. It's just a fantastic switch into Ho-Oh. I don't really get any great coverage for that Pokemon. It doesn't do too much damage back to me though, and unless he specifically tailored builds to beat the Ho-Oh, which would be a little bit weird if he's just like dual stabs, Thunderbolt, Overheat, Volt Switch, as well as Thunder Wave. I don't really think you're going to be Thunder Wave here because I have dual grounds that can switch in on that. I think you're going to be Willow if you're any status move, but if he's Thunder Wave, then he completely shuts down Ho-Oh in any capacity. Ho-Oh can't really do a whole lot. Bandit does some good damage. Boosted in general with like Weakness Policy does some good damage, but Rotom shuts down the Ho-Oh. So I think that has, in my opinion, is going to be Dialga, Fluttermane, Mew, Ogerpon, Quack, and Rotom. Weezing could come. I don't really see it. I think Weezing makes not a ton of sense, and then Sableye actually does make a ton of sense. Sableye, like I said earlier, to disrupt my setup, and specifically Boulder and Kyurem Black, I think makes a lot of sense. And then the only Pokemon that I don't think has literally any merit, and I think any way you slice it should not come in this matchup, is Shaman. I do not think I ever see Shaman coming here. I don't think it makes sense. Even like a Subseed set gets beat by Gholdengo. You could be like Subseed Earth Power, Seed Flare, but then you get beat by the Ho-Oh. Like I don't see the merit to Shaman. All right, boys, I've yapped long enough. Let's talk about my team and why we are bringing it again. Big ups, big shout out to Wagon Fruit for helping me with this last second, putting some finishing touches on it. The first Pokemon is going to be Ho-Oh, and like I said, I'm not super confident in this Ho-Oh set. The two sets that were debated were this set, Recover, Flame Charge, Sacred Fire, and Dual Wing Beat with the Weakness Policy, as well as Scarf. The only problem that I ran into with Scarf is I really did not like locking a move. Specifically, if I ever lock a Fire move, letting the Quack in and not having a sack and him getting 2 Aqua Steps off means the game is over. So I didn't really like that opportunity. Weakness Policy is a little tough to proc here. Primarily, our target is Rotom. If he's not Thunder Wave, which I don't think he will be, we can get that Flame Charge and the Weakness Policy procced on that Pokemon. We're Dual Wing Beat instead of Brave Bird. One, because Aqua Step from Adamant Quack, which I think he will be, does 90%, so I can't really afford any recoil damage. And Dual Wing Beat also OHKOs a 0 HP Ogerpon Cornerstone and allows us to get that 2 hits off in case we're unable to break that sturdy. Otherwise, I mean, this set, it's just, I want to say it's our in-game, but not really. It's just kind of whenever we can get it in to do as much damage as possible. If there is a situation in which we have to pivot out of this Pokemon, like if, I don't know how I want to word this. This is ideally our in-game, right? But I am more than happy to use this as a mid-game breaker to open up for some of our other Pokemon, because finding that in-game with Ho-Oh is going to be pretty hard, especially if he brings something that we're not really expecting. And if he doesn't bring Rotom at all, then propping the Weakness Policy is going to be borderline impossible, minus on the Quack. So we do have to be a little mindful of how we play this Ho-Oh. Like I said, not super sold on the set, but we're going to move forward with it. Next up is going to be our guaranteed lead. We've got Kyurem Black. We're going to be the set that I said, DD, Spear, Fusion Bolt, and Earth Power. We are going to be the Charty Berry. I had an original build where the in-game was this set, and I wasn't Charty Berry. I was Loaded Dice, and I was Scale Shot over Earth Power because at +1, I can break through that Rotom pretty easily. But I found it very hard to actually find the opportunity to get the Dragon Dance off. So with me leading this Pokemon, the 2 Pokemon that I anticipate to be led the most are Ogerpon and Crook, and if he doesn't bring either of those, he could also lead the Rotom. Chip on Rotom is fantastic. We can just Earth Power him raw. I'm willing to trade the Willow for that for the in-game of the Ho-Oh. Otherwise, we can Dragon Dance. He'll be forced to switch, and whatever he wants to go into does not like taking Icicle Spear unless he goes hard into Mew. That would be like the only tough situation, and then we really have to think about what we have to do because Mew is pretty difficult for us to deal with. That's a lot to digest. Basically, what I'm saying is this Pokemon, I think, in my opinion, is the best lead that we possibly have. Even though it's the best Pokemon in the matchup, it makes it very hard for Owen to deny us at least half damage on something on turn 2, depending on how he plays around it. We have enough special attack to OHKO a max HP Rotom, I want to say, with Earth Power. We have enough speed to outspeed the Crook, and then we went the rest into attack. Our next Pokemon here is going to be Iron Boulder. We decided to go with Terra Fairy because Fairy is extremely spammable into him. And like I said, boulders can be used in a couple of different ways here. I really debated like a Swords Dance booster energy with Terra Fighting, but I found, again, if I've just seemed very difficult to get off, and if he brings Sableye, we're completely invalidated. And if he's Terra Steel Mew and we don't force that Terra, which is a little hard to do if he doesn't waste it on the Kyurem Black early, it's hard to find. We have to have that 50-50 with that Mew, and I don't really like that. So instead, I wanted something to guarantee outspeed the +1 Quack, and our Boulder here can do that, and even so, Boulder can take a +1 Aqua Step as well, so I feel pretty comfortable with that, and he's able to OHKO through with the Terra Blast or the Psycho Cut. Mighty Cleave plus Psycho Cut hits pretty much everything. Terra Blast is spammable late game. Close combat, we can hit into the Dialga, the Ogerpon, or the Terra Steel Mew. I like this set a lot. I think it's hard for him to switch into, and I think he's going to get some big damage off. Primarily is here to catch him off guard as a Revenge Killer, maybe into a Flutter Mane, maybe into a Quack, whatever the case may be, catch him off guard and show that we are Scarf. Next up, we've got Big Bloopster. We're Mental Herb. I'm going to say it right now, I wasn't confident on an item. Mental Herb primarily here for taunt on Ogerpon or taunt on the Sableye. Spikes are pretty important. One single spike is pretty important here because it breaks a late game sturdy on that Ogerpon. Rapid Spin is pretty free minus the Flutter Mane, and if he goes hard Flutter Mane, we have pivots into either our Ho-Oh or a Pokemon we're going to talk about in a second. Giga Drain plus Earth Power is pretty free. We have enough speed to outspeed the Crook. We can live an Ogerpon Power Whip after a Spike, just get some last ditch damage off, or get a Rapid Spin off if he's not a Trailblaze set, and then we went the rest into special attack. I'm not super sold on Bloopy here, but keeping hazards away for this type of build is extremely important. Grimmsnarl, which I didn't bring, could have easily slotted into this spot, but again, I super value getting away those hazards, and for better or worse, it's Bloopy. Next up, we're bringing him again. Shout out once again to the Mudkip guy. We've got Assault Vest Swampert. This mon does really well at shutting down the Dialga, like completely shutting down that Pokemon, unless he is like a Bulk Up or Iron Defense set, in which case we can flip turn into Toedscruel, actually, to outspeed and get some massive damage off of them, Revenge with Boulder or Ho-Oh. Yeah, I mean, Swampert does really good at that, and a non-energy ball Flutter Mane we also wall pretty hard as well. If he specs, we take like 40% max from a Moonblast or 43 from a Side Shock, so that's some good damage there. We have enough attack to guarantee to a KO. I want to say max HP Dialga, or KO the Flutter Mane after a Spike. I think that's what that was for, enough speed for a little bit of creeps. Rest in the special defense, this Pokemon is just a great general sponge for Dialga plus Flutter Mane. And then lastly, we did decide to go with Mr. Feast. This was a set that we cooked up literally 30 minutes ago, me and Wagon. We'll recover with Thunder Wave, Make It Rain, and Hex. He doesn't want to switch in Ho-Oh on this Pokemon, he doesn't want to switch Rotom in on this Pokemon because otherwise he loses HP on his pivot into Ho-Oh. Recover gives us longevity. Colbur allows us to not lose in the in-game to an Ogerpon. We have enough defense. We have enough special defense to live a Shadow Ball after Rocks from a non-boosting Flutter Mane. Enough speed to outspeed the Crook creeping 12 speed, what was it, a 12 speed Ho-Oh, I think it was? Or maybe we were outspeeding a 12 speed Crook, something like that. And then our defense investment allows us to live a Stomping Tantrum at +2 from the Ogerpon most of the time. That's as much defense as I could spare, and then we're modest. Thunder Wave's pretty free into things like the Dialga. Like I said, I don't think he's going to go hard Rotom on this. If he does, I'd be a little surprised to take that Shadow Ball from him, but he totally could use that as a pivot, but we have a pivot in a Swampert regardless, so I don't really care. Once we get rid of that Rotom, then Thunder Wave's completely free, and then we have Hex to do big damage. Make It Rain's pretty strong as well into his team. And primarily this Pokemon's here because Ogerpon does me really, really dirty if we do not break that sturdy late game. So having that Colbur attack can be very detrimental. That is going to be the team, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, the Ho-Oh I'm not so sure about, but the rest of the team I'm feeling very strong about. Leading that Kyurem Black, picking up as much damage as possible, or forcing the Terra on that Mew and seeing how we play around that Pokemon. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, guys, and I will go ahead and jump on into this match. Thank you guys so much for watching. And for now, guys, this has been John Jr. signing off.